Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com. Once again with you. Today's the second day of January 2017, and I want to spend the beginning of the show talking about a little bit of a recap of what I spoke about yesterday. And I tell you, there are very few things that I can tell you that I'm any more passionate about. And I think that from a mindset that we all have is we're all considered and we're all concerned about number one. And it's understandable that we feel that way. We care about ourselves. We care about those around us. We care about putting ourselves in the best opportunity to succeed in every facet of our life. And once again, I'm going to say that there's nothing wrong with that mentality or that thought process, because it's important. Because we understand that most people, when it comes to people that are not ourselves, are very selfish, and they're looking out for their number one. And if we're not looking out for ourselves and our own best interest, then we are putting ourselves at a little bit of a disadvantage, because that next guy, that next woman, whatever it is in regards to the competition that we have in life, they're looking out for themselves. So we need to look out for ourselves. That being said, there is a perceived ignorance that every one of us have, and we have to be more accountable and understanding and respond to that. And as we move into America in the year 2018, there are plenty of reasons to just not care about anybody else. And one of the points that I'm going to continue to drive home with this program is the need to have to be there for each other. And the fact that there are plenty of people that are going through issues, there are plenty of people that are having hard times, and when it comes to the presentation of ourselves, we'll continue to not show signs, or we'll show signs that are very weak. And it's going to be up to us. It's going to be up to every single one of us to look out for each other. And when I talk about steps that need to be taken in regards to this country to get ourselves unified, to get ourselves back together and on the same page, it's going to start at some point for looking out for one another. And what have I said a number of times? America is the greatest country in the world. It's set up to where anybody, no matter who it is you are, what your difference is, whether the difference is something that you can't control or it's a difference that you declare every day and say, hey, I'm so much different from everybody else, or I belong to my little group. Any little group, no matter what it is or where it's come from, it has a chance to succeed. And we all have a chance to succeed. But there's going to come a point in everyone's life where we should be able to step forward and be there for somebody else that's in need. And I'm not talking about your half-ass charity donation to say that I'm donating to something, so I'm showing that I care. Because there's a big front that's put behind that, and there's a little bit of deception that's done when we go out there and say, hey, I donated for a charity, so I care about somebody else. Everybody has an inner circle. Everybody has an outer circle. And what I was talking about yesterday, if you listen to the program, there are people in need. And there are people in need for a bunch of different reasons. Some of them just need a friend. Some of them just need somebody that'll sit there and listen to them talk about their troubles. Because a lot of people have troubles and a lot of people have issues that they hold on within themselves, and they're afraid to discuss them. And when you look at what happened, New Year's Eve in Long Branch, or look what happened in Orlando, or you look at what's happened in all these different scenarios where people have decided to get their hands on a semi-automatic weapon and start shooting. What's happened in these spots? We could talk about for a second how maybe some of these acts of violence could have been prevented. And there's going to be one in the future that maybe you or I or somebody else around us may actually have a say in being able to prevent. And the question that I ask for the couple people that are listening to my show, hopefully we could get out to the 200 million people in this country, and I could ask the same question. Are you going to take a moment to be there for somebody else that's in need? Or are you going to be selfish and go back to what I was saying before and make it all about number one, saying I only care about myself and I only care about those that are the closest around me? Well, what happens when one of the closest around you is going through a little bit of trouble? You're going to turn your back on them too? Because when we go out there and we say it's another random act of violence, when it's another terrorist, when it's another person that everybody in the country is going to say, I'm so much better than that person. What happens when it hits close enough to home? And you can have a say in determining whether that person is going to go over the edge and start killing people for no reason. Or are you going to put yourself out there to the point to say, hey, you have somebody that you could talk to. You could discuss your problems. Not every one of your conversations has to be, hi, how you doing? Fine, thank you. You could have the opportunity. Every one of us will have the opportunity at some point. And the bottom line, and I'll keep saying this until the day that I freaking die, we have a chance to impact the world around us. We have a chance to impact the people around us, the positive people and the negative people. And we need to treat each other with the same respect that we feel like we deserve. And sometimes it's going to be in a position where we have a conversation with somebody that may not necessarily be the most happy, may not be the most upbeat, may be going through some problems. And I tell you, as a society right now, we're being extremely ignorant and extremely self-centered. And I hope everybody understands that. I feel like I'm not doing enough. Me going out here on this program and speaking about it every day, I don't feel I'm doing enough. I've opened my mind over the last 6 months to the year, to 2 years. And it felt that it's quite all right to have that uncomfortable conversation with somebody that may not feel like they're on the up and up. Ask little Bobby or little Tommy or little Johnny or little Samantha, how you doing? And if they answer that a question gives you any indication that something's not right, no, listen, you have somebody to talk to. It's me here. You can let me know how you're really feeling. Because we never know when that small conversation that you could have had parlays and avalanches into something that's so out of control and sets a spiral feeling that goes on in somebody's mind where they think about doing something crazy. And yes, we want to keep them out of harm's way of other people. But I've spoken about on the show the fact that the last couple weeks of the year are when some people are the most vulnerable because they're looking back on their time. They're looking back and reflecting on what probably hasn't been a good year. How many people have talked about the year 2017 being the worst year, being a terrible year? I know people say that every year. But maybe it's time we start to listen to people that are down on themselves and are talking about 2017 being such a terrible year. I'll tell you this, I'm happy with my year. I have everything that I could have asked for in my life. And I'm not saying it in a bragging way. But I'm saying that to know that I'm here for anybody that didn't have a good year. Have a conversation with somebody. You know, for your fortunes and everything that has gone well for you and everything that you are so excited and fortunate and thankful that you've had the opportunity to do and have and see. Maybe we can bring those that aren't as fortunate, those that aren't as good on their luck. They're bad on their luck. Things aren't going right for them. Come on, we can do it. I can't be the only one that's trying to get this message out there. The message that I'm saying cannot be that stupid. Maybe you, the person that's watching the show right now, can get the message out better than I can. And if you can, good for you. I'll support you. There are plenty of people that are down right now. There are plenty of people that are unhappy right now. And I don't want to go into all the reasons. There's plenty of reasons for people to be unhappy right now. In fact, you're in a group that exists that's pretty powerful. There's a lot of unhappy people. But the message out there is not to go the violent route. People that have absolutely no reason for you feeling the way you do should not become innocent victims. And it is about mental health. Somebody that's down on themselves enough where they want to take their own life needs to understand, or maybe needs some reiteration, that there is something worth living for. And when we keep turning our backs on these people, when we keep brushing them aside, making them feel even worse about themselves, you're going to have the nerve to not take any responsibility or accountability when this person takes their own life? Because in some cases, the signs are there. In some cases, people are crying and asking for the help. Problem is, they're just not getting it. And when we define what help is, we think of help being the psych ward or a therapist. Help can exist on multiple different fronts, and can help. Again, people can be helped by people like you and me. So at some point, I really hope that we can be more conscious of those around us. And while we're out there looking for number one, looking out for number one, thinking it's the most important thing, we understand that it is a little bit selfish. Because there's others that need help too. And you know what? If you were the one in need, you'd set up your GoFundMe account. You'd sit here and ask every single person around you, whether it's for money or support, because it involves you. But we continue to turn our backs on people that are in need. Why? Because things are okay for us, and things are working well for us. And I'm sorry, it's sad. I don't want anybody to feel like there's no way out. But unfortunately, life has a way of taking shots at you, and sometimes making you feel like there is no way out, or no way you can change or get better or get out of a situation that you're in. When that thought exists, in many cases, it's just a long process. And we have to encourage people to continue along with the process. Get a little better every day. Take more steps to get towards the solution of your situation every day. And you know what? I'll continue to preach this. If you don't like what I'm saying, I guess turn the program off. But the bottom line is, I'm saying this because I care. I'm saying this because I want to be there for people when they're in need. And I know that there's enough people, there's way more people that are fortunate and lucky than people that are unfortunate and unlucky. We can take a step off our soapbox and stop thinking about ourselves. We could be there for somebody in need, and we could prevent that next mass shooting. We could prevent that next suicide. When you sit there and you look at somebody, and I've known people that have taken their own lives, and there's no more hopeless feeling when somebody you know decides that there's no other way to live and this place isn't good enough for them and there's no other way out but to take their own life. And there's no more guilt that's going to exist in somebody when they know somebody that has done it. And I tell you, there's a lot of people out there that just are going to continue to be ignorant and continue to ignore the message until it touches close enough to home. And what's going to have to happen? Is it going to have to be somebody close enough to you that's going to either contemplate suicide or commit suicide? Or somebody is going to allow their negative thoughts become a derangement and get to the point where they don't care about life as it exists, whether it's their own or anybody else's? Because when that happens, you, the person that's not involved in it, that just knows the person that's doing it, are going to start feeling sorry for yourself. And my message to you is there is no way that you should deserve or have the right to feel sorry for yourself. Once again, John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. Happy to be with you. Hopefully, if there's one of my videos that you could take a listen back to and try to get the message of what I said, it's my show from yesterday. And once again, I didn't plan on doing a show New Year's Day. But I tell you, I felt that it was time to put a message out there. I felt like it was time to pretty much put a cap on what I was talking about in regards to the new year. And listen, there's a lot of people out there that wake up every day and it's a struggle. And my message to you is that keep fighting on. And the fact that you get up every day and you have things that aren't going as well as you want them to go, but you continue to go out there and fight and get stronger and try to get over whatever it is your situation is, good for you. You need more encouragement. And I'm here to give you as much encouragement as I possibly can. But most importantly, to get the message out there, to get the encouragement up amongst people. You know, rather than waiting for that person to walk by that we know is down on his luck. Give that person a couple minutes of your time. Have a little bit of a conversation going on with them. And you know what? While you have your laundry list of things you need to do with work, with family, with errands, spend a couple minutes talking to that person that's having a bad day or going through a bad moment or going through a tough time. Let them know that there's somebody there for them. We're going to move on to the world of sports. A couple things we're going to hit up here. Carson Palmer announces his retirement. Pretty good career. You know, 3-time Pro Bowler, 15-year NFL quarterback. Unfortunately, would have probably liked to play his last full season. But here's a guy that's been injured a lot. He's gone out there and, you know, out of USC, has done had a pretty good career. I would say he's probably not a Hall of Famer. Maybe one of those guys that, you know, played well enough, had a good career. But I wish him the best in his retirement. The NFL, series of coaching moves going on. Spoke about a little bit about it yesterday when I was on Michael Cohen's open mic program. You can check that out on YouTube as well. And the bottom line is I ended up doing a show yesterday, and there was so much stuff that I could have covered in a world of sports. And I was just hoping, and I still am hoping. You know what? If you watch my video from yesterday, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook Live, whether it's on Periscope, and you get my message and you like it, share it with people. Let some more people see it. Hopefully get an avalanche going. I don't care about what people perceive my knowledge of sports is. I don't want to be known for that. I care as much about baseball and sports as I do about unifying America and about the people that live in this country. And I hate to keep getting back to it. And if the fact that I keep talking about this bothers you, then turn it off. But my hope is there's enough people that are going to get this message and will understand that it isn't about me or it isn't about you individually. It's about what we could all do for each other. And we could do a lot more for each other if we just tried. And we just cared a little bit more about how somebody else was doing as opposed to how things benefit ourselves. So let's see. Let's see if I can get through the program here and talk about the world of sports. Because I'm telling you, this is something that I'm spending night and day thinking about. And maybe I'll use the format of this program to get the word out there and preach this a little more often. You got the Cincinnati Bengals. They had a big win on Sunday. They ended up eliminating their division rivals, the Baltimore Ravens, from the postseason. Obviously a big win, coming back, the touchdown late. Now all of a sudden, you find out that Marvin Lewis is going to come back. You know, one of the longest tenured coaches in the NFL, who seems like he's been hanging on to a job that is not producing a lot of fruit. The Bengals have had a hard time over the last several years competing on a national level, competing within their own division. They're going out there trying to compete for the playoffs. They missed out. And when they get to the playoffs, they're out pretty easy in the first round. When you look at the team as a franchise, they're 5-14 in a history in playoffs. They missed the playoffs for the second year in a row. They lost in the wild card round of the playoffs 5 years in a row. 6 of the last 7 years. Marvin Lewis has been there since 2003. And you know what? Outside of a 4-11-1 season and a 4-12 season they had in 2008 and 2010 respectively, he's led the team to pretty decent records. Some 8-8s, a 7-9. The last 2 years, 6-9-1 and 7-9. But outside of that, he's gotten the most out of the team. And if you look at where the Cincinnati Bengals were before that, under Dick LeBeau, under Bruce Coslett, under Mike Shula, under Sam Weish. I know Sam Weish had a couple good years when he was there. Last year was 3-13. Before that, 9-7, 8-8, 12-4. 12-4 season, got to the Super Bowl. But the Cincinnati Bengals have struggled for a long time. And I will say this. I didn't even think about it this way because I was under the assumption, like most people, that Marvin Lewis was not going to come back next year. I may be one of the very few. But I'm rooting for Marvin Lewis. And I don't know what the Bengals are. In other words, are they best suited going forward with Andy Dalton as their quarterback? Can they mix enough around him to become a winning team and compete for a Super Bowl with Andy Dalton? I don't know. I mean, Andy Dalton to me is slightly above average. I don't look at him as that big-time quarterback to have on your team. Knowing that he's running your team, you're going to be fine. Is there a better option out there? Maybe. Is Andy Dalton in the top 16 in regards to quarterbacks? Probably. Maybe it's time they bring in somebody to challenge him a little bit. A.J. McCarron's been the backup for the last couple of years. He hasn't gotten much of an opportunity except when Dalton's been hurt. Maybe it's time that they either draft somebody or trade for somebody or bring in another quarterback to compete with him. But I tell you, I'm on team Marvin Lewis. Not too many things happen in the NFL to allow a coach to continue to be at the helm as long as Marvin Lewis has been. You know, you look at the Bill Cowhers of the world. You know, how many coaches get a chance to go out on their own terms? I'd like to see Marvin Lewis turn the Bengals around, and it looks like he's going to get that opportunity. So good for him. On Friday, we'll do Pielli's picks in regards to the playoffs. Talking a little bit, you know, and I tell you, in regards to sports, the thing that should be up at the front, in the forefront right now, but isn't, is Major League Baseball. This should be the time where we should be analyzing the best teams or what teams have had the best off seasons. And in all honesty, outside of a couple, maybe the Yankees by getting Giancarlo Stanton, maybe the Angels, who have been probably the most active team in regards to Major League Baseball this offseason, getting Ohtani, signing Zach Cozart, trading for Ian Kinsler. Outside of that, how many teams would you say have had a lot of success this offseason? The answer is not that many. The Giants made the trade for Evan Longoria. It looks like they're going to be active. After having the second worst record in all Major League Baseball and finishing the season as bad as they did, they feel like they can up and turn it around. And I've looked at a series of teams, and the mentality has existed in regards to Major League Baseball saying that once you have a run of prominence, whether it's 2-3 years, whether you're lucky enough to have a run that lasts a little bit longer than that, then it's time to tear it down and start over. And pretty similar to the reason that I'm telling you that I'm rooting for Marvin Lewis in Cincinnati with the Bengals, I want to see a team like the San Francisco Giants be able to retool at the level that they are and have another serious run in them. I know 3 World Series championships in 5 years is enough for anybody. But baseball, the way it's set, the way the media perceives everything, right? The way the analytics people, the way they study the game, they tell you that you've had enough success, it's time to completely invest in your farm system and sacrifice a couple of years. And I like somebody that puts their finger back at the opposition that's trying to tell them what to do and say, we're going to do it our own way. And I don't know how it's going to pan out for the San Francisco Giants. You know, odds are probably stacked against them a little bit. There's probably a better chance that the San Francisco Giants are going to fall flat on their face over the next couple of years than they are going to be able to retool and get themselves back to competing with the likes of the Dodgers and the Cubs in the National League. But I like the fact that they're choosing their own way to do it. They're not doing what the media tells them to do. Because there are a lot of teams that have gone that route and decided to rebuild. I'll look at one team right now, the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds have been rebuilding, and yes, their farm system has gotten progressively better over their last couple of years. Nick Senzel should come up and be a Rookie of the Year candidate next year. They still have their star player in Joey Votto, who they've invested in, and decided maybe for the lack of no other reasons, because maybe they can't trade him, they built the team around him. But there's not enough momentum going on in Cincinnati after now it's been, 3 years, 4 years, to make me think that the Cincinnati Reds have turned the corner and are progressing in the right way. I was thinking that about the Atlanta Braves last year. And I'll tell you, as we hit the halfway point here on the Passball Show, John Pielli with you, the second day of January 2018. Talking a little right now about whether a long-term rebuild is the best way to go for a franchise in Major League Baseball, or will there be enough teams that say, hey, we could retool with what we got and turn it over? Now, the New York Yankees had the best of both worlds. They had a couple good young players in Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, made a great trade to get Didi Gregorius, a young shortstop who was still entering the prime of his career. And they did it at the exact right time. Made a couple trades at the trading deadline of 2016, got themselves Gleyber Torres, got themselves Clint Frazier, developed a couple other guys, traded for Justice Sheffield, got Chance Adams, Miguel Andujar, and kind of had the perfect storm where they're able to mold some young players that they developed on their own, which, by the way, good drafts, good scouting, you're able to do that. Brought in some other good young players, but also were able to throw money. And let's be honest, the fact that they have money allowed them to be able to pick up Giancarlo Stanton in his contract. Not everybody has that opportunity in that perfect storm of the New York Yankees. So a lot of other teams in baseball have to make a decision whether they have enough power to be able to go for it right now, or is it time to go the Houston Astros route and rebuild? Kansas City Royals spent many years doing that. So I can't put the Kansas City Royals at the same level of the Houston Astros. The Royals sucked for 20 years. And you know what? After a while, the you-know-what is going to stick. When you have a top 5 pick 5 years in a row or 7 out of 10 years, eventually you're going to draft somebody that's good. The Tampa Bay Rays were bad for how long? It took them 10 years of being a bad baseball team and having a top pick in the draft each and every year to finally develop some good young players. So teams that just stink for a while are not the new format. They're not the new way to go. Do you think the Tampa Bay Rays wanted to be bad as long as they were? Do you think the Kansas City Royals wanted to be bad as long as they were? Same thing with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Same thing with however many teams you could say were at the bottom of the division year in and year out. You think that's the way they wanted to do it? At some point, they're like, you know what? It's been bad for this long. You know what? We might as well try starting from scratch. And at some point, you get some good draft picks. You invest some money in your scouting department. You make a couple good moves. And all of a sudden, a bad team that has been bad for so long becomes good. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about is the team that has had a bad year or two. Let's look at the Philadelphia Phillies for a second. They had the run. They had a winning season in 2006. They won the division in 2007. Won the World Series in 2008. Went to the World Series in 2009. Won their division in 2010 and 2011. General manager Ruben Amaro invested in that team in 2012 and 2013. Tried to get every little thing he possibly could out of it because there was enough good players and there was enough talent around to believe that something could have been done. But at some point, the Phillies, from the ownership down, decided that it was time to invest in their farm system. Dropped payroll drastically. Started developing their own players. And now as we head to 2018, there's a pretty good chance that they're finally trending in the right direction. Now, the Phillies are going to be a good test case for, does it make sense to completely break it down and start from the beginning? The Houston Astros did it, but I can't even say that the Kansas City Royals did the same thing. They struggled for so long that they really had no other choice. The Houston Astros were a bona fide team in the middle part of the 2000s. Went to the World Series in 2005. The year before, they took the St. Louis Cardinals to the last and deciding game in the National League Championship Series. They had a lot of talent in the years after that. But at some point, they decided it was time to trade Hunter Pence and Roy Oswalt and move on from the veterans that they had on the team, and it was time to start over. And they did it. They had some of the worst seasons in recent baseball history, but invested money in their scouting department, drafted very well, and developed some very good young players that ended up becoming the faces of that franchise. Now, if the Phillies are able to do the same thing and succeed, they could be another case. But remember, it's not like the Houston Astros have thrown a bunch of money at players. They've made a couple of moves. They signed Josh Reddick. They traded for Justin Verlander and took on his contract. Made a couple moves for relievers. But you don't look at the Houston Astros as all of a sudden a high-spending team. This is why I'm intrigued by the Philadelphia Phillies. They have the money to go out there and sign themselves a Carlos Santana for $20 million a year. I think Santana's going to help that team. Are they setting themselves up for that offseason in 2018 when Manny Machado is going to be out there and Bryce Harper is going to be out there and maybe even Clayton Kershaw is going to be out there? They're going to sit pretty well. They're going to have the opportunity because they're going to have the money to spend. The key with the Phillies is going to be the development of their younger players. What are you going to get out of J.P. Crawford this year in his first full season? Is Scott Kingery the answer at second base? Is Mickey Moniak on his way up to the majors sooner rather than later? They got some good young players in the Cole Hamel trade. They got Nick Williams. They got Alfaro, the catcher. They have the opportunity to do some good things. And I think hiring Gabe Kapler as their manager is going to put them in a very good position because he's a very good baseball man. He knows what he's doing. He deserves some of the credit for what has happened with the Los Angeles Dodgers over the last couple of years. And everybody looks at the Dodgers and says, hey, they have the money to spend. Well, you know what? There's a lot of similarities between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Because when the Phillies are rolling and things are going right, they have a willingness, ableness, and interest in spending more money. They're willing to invest in their team. And you know what? The last couple of years, in all honesty, there hasn't been that much to invest in. So I applaud them to not throw money out there for the sake of throwing money out there. Maybe that's the difference between them and the Dodgers. Maybe if the Dodgers were struggling, they'd still throw big money at big contracts. I don't know. But you're looking at two similar organizations, and if the Phillies can get enough trending in the right direction, if they can develop some better young pitching to go along with some of their younger position players, which, by the way, they need to develop. Maikel Franco has to turn his game up. He had a terrible season last year. There's some doubts whether Maikel Franco is even going to be the third baseman of the future of the Phillies now. He performed that badly last year. Odubel Herrera was a great Rule 5 pick. In fact, one of the better Rule 5 picks we've seen in the last 20 years. He came to the Phillies, became an everyday center fielder. You know, you got Rhys Hopkins. He's probably going to be their left fielder with Santana playing first base. I gotta be honest. If I'm a Phillies fan, I think the future is going to be pretty bright. And it's going to get better once the Phillies build enough momentum to where they start investing in certain needs of the rest of their team. But I think they're going to be a very good test case because there's been plenty of examples of teams that have fallen from grace, whether it's the Reds, whether it's the Milwaukee Brewers. You're looking at the Detroit Tigers, who are going through a very similar situation. They're probably going to rebuild, but they also have the likes of Miguel Cabrera, who I don't know if he wants to stick around for a rebuild. For the first time in a while, he's shown that maybe he isn't the same player that he was when he was winning Triple Crowns and MVPs. Now it's time for the Tigers to invest a little bit into their farm system. Next couple of years aren't going to be too great for them. But the Tigers, similar to the Phillies, have the ability, when things are going right, to invest in their own team. And I think the Tigers are going to have to look at what they need to do to get the right type of core going. Because who are you building the Detroit Tigers around right now? There isn't that impactful young player that you think is going to come up. So I think, they're going to be in an interesting spot. Obviously, a year that doesn't look too well for them. But going back to the original point that I made here, we have so many stories that we don't even know how to tell because of the amount of free agents that are still out there. And I've spoken about a couple of the reasons why there are so many free agents that have yet to be signed. Some of it has to do with teams feeling from an offensive standpoint they're able to supplement their offense with players that are making less money. When it comes to pitching, you're looking at Jake Arrieta and Alex Cobb and Lance Lynn, who in most years would have signed lucrative deals with teams already. The fact is, teams are looking at their bullpens, and they're looking at the fact that their relievers, if they could fortify the back end of their bullpen, they'll have a chance to win a lot more games. And they're investing their money there, saying, why am I going to pay a pitcher $15, $20, $30 million a year if he's only going to go 6 innings? I'd rather invest that money in the 7th inning, in the 8th inning, and the 9th inning, and have guys that are proven that we know could go in there and get the job done 2, 3, maybe 4 times a week. So the question is going to be, in regards to free agency, how is this going to turn around? Eventually, the 100-something players that are out there that are free agents right now are going to end up playing for somebody. And maybe there are more high-profile players that will go into the season without a job. But I doubt the top of the top when we're talking about Hosper, Martinez, Moustakas, Arrieta. I'll even throw Lynn and Cobb in there. They're going to be playing for somebody in spring training. And the question is, and this has been the biggest question that is probably the reason that we're in the situation they're in. The teams that these players are playing for, how much have they increased their chances of winning by adding these type of players? Is there a team that could sign Jake Arrieta and say, that's the piece that we need to get us over the top? Is there a team out there that's going to sign Eric Hosmer or J.D. Martinez saying that's the piece that we need to put ourselves over the top? A lot of it will depend on what team they end up signing with. The St. Louis Cardinals are in a very good position. They made the trade for Marcell Ozuna, which, by the way, I thought that was a better acquisition than it would have been had they gotten Giancarlo Stanton. Because, first of all, they're not tying themselves up to the Stanton contract. They have the ability to make another move if they want to go out there and sign an Eric Hosmer. All of a sudden, you got Ozuna and Hosmer added to the team that you already have. If they want to sign Todd Frazier to play third base, move Matt Carpenter to first base, add another pitcher, add another reliever, they have a chance to have a better team. The Yankees were probably the best place for Stanton, because Stanton is, with the Yankees, isn't a 24+1. Stanton joins an offense that already has Judge and Sanchez and Gregorius. He's not brought there to do it by himself. He would have been had he gone to St. Louis. He would have been had he been traded to San Francisco. I think both the Cardinals and the Giants are in a better position because they didn't trade for Giancarlo Stanton. But I can't sit here and even be able to predict what teams are going to make these moves, because there's a vested interest in the Arizona Diamondbacks bringing back J.D. Martinez for the same reason that the Mets brought back Yoenis Cespedes a couple years ago. I mean, Martinez was that good. He had that much of an impact on that team. And I know the Diamondbacks were probably heading to the playoffs anyway, just because of the lack of good teams in the National League in 2017. But I'll tell you, when the Diamondbacks are playing the Dodgers and the D-backs are matching their pitchers up against the Dodgers and putting that offense up against the Dodgers, J.D. Martinez gave them as good of a shot as anybody to beat them in that series. So if the Diamondbacks are looking at their team going into 2018, man, I tell you, I would make the best offer possible to bring back J.D. Martinez. And I'm not going to get into the discussion I had about J.D. Martinez earlier when I was talking in 2011 about how good J.D. Martinez was going to be when he was playing for the Houston Astros. Because you know what? I don't get it right too often. So I'm not going to sit here and brag about the one time that I got it right. He is a good player, and he's going to be a good player for a while. But looking back on the baseball offseason, I tell you, as we get into January, then February, then March, we start to analyze what teams look the best. I mean, you could say the Yankees look good. You could say that the teams that were good last year look good. The Dodgers, the Astros, the Indians, the Red Sox. You could say the Angels got better. But I tell you, there's so much out there and so much that exists in regards to possibilities. And it's funny, we were waiting for first the GM meetings, then the baseball winter meetings, now Christmas and New Year's. And we're waiting for those dominoes to start to tumble. Still hasn't happened yet. And I think if you're a fan of any baseball team, for the exception of very few, there's a couple teams that the future doesn't look so great for, maybe the distant future, but the immediate future. 2018 looks like it's going to be a bad year for a couple teams. But outside of those couple teams, there's a lot of opportunity. And whatever team you happen to root for, there's still may be some hope. And some teams that may not have thought that 2018 was going to be the year that they could go for it may see different opportunities and chances right now. If they see some of the players that they maybe in a dream would have targeted all of a sudden becoming a possibility because the price goes down, then you may start to look at free agents signing in places that we would not have perceived them to sign once the season ended. Once again, John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. I'll be with you again tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. I believe we will be joined by Mark Carrig of Newsday. He's going to talk a little Mets. He's going to talk about his Hall of Fame vote. But we have just about confirmation that Mark Carrig will be joining the program tomorrow. I'm trying to think about some things that kind of interest me. And I was talking about the Buffalo Bills yesterday when I was on the open mic program. It's been a while since they've been in the postseason, 1999. They end up winning the game against the Miami Dolphins, but also having to wait. And the comeback at the end, a late touchdown by the Cincinnati Bengals, beat the Baltimore Ravens, ending their season and propelling the Buffalo Bills into the playoffs. And I think about one team that stands out now that has the longest playoff drought in regards to professional sports. And, of course, we're talking about baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. And that's the Seattle Mariners. And the Seattle Mariners interest me for this reason. They had a good amount of success when Lou Piniella was their manager. And I find it fascinating the fact that the Seattle Mariners have never made it to the postseason, either before or after when Lou Piniella was not their manager. And the Mariners have been in existence in Major League Baseball since 1977. So you're looking at 40-plus years. They played their 41st season. And Lou Piniella was their manager from the years of 1993 to 2002. The Seattle Mariners never made it to the postseason until 1995. Did it again in 97. Again in 2000 and 2001. So they've been in the playoffs 4 different times, including the 2001 season where they won an MLB record 116 games. They had some good teams there. Griffey and A-Rod, Ichiro, Randy Johnson. And you look at the teams that they had before that, and of course they had some struggles. It took them a little while before they got any momentum going in regards to drafts. And when I was talking before about the Kansas City Royals or the Pittsburgh Pirates, they ended up stepping in you-know-what when they drafted Ken Griffey Jr. They made the trade for Randy Johnson. They dealt with a Montreal Expos team that was looking to get to the postseason so bad, was willing to give up a guy who was a little bit of a project. Randy Johnson wasn't perfect. He was a very highly touted prospect with a ton of talent, skill, and ability. But they developed him. They drafted Alex Rodriguez. They had themselves a little bit of a window. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to do that since. Since Lou Piniella left the team after 2002, and by the way, it was a 93-win season for the Mariners. They won 93 the next year under Bob Melvin. And they've gone through a series of different managers. Bob Melvin, Mike Hargrove, John McLaren, Jim Riggleman, Don Wakamatsu, Eric Wedge, Lloyd McClendon, and now Scott Service. They've been a team that has had some promise over the last couple seasons. And I'm wondering, because I've made false predictions over the last couple seasons, having the Mariners go to the playoffs in 2016 and then again in 2017, guess what? They didn't. Are they in a good enough position to be able to get over the hump in 2018? Because right now, the Seattle Mariners have the longest going playoff drought in all of professional sports. It's not the Buffalo Bills anymore. Seattle Bills do this weekend as they head to Jacksonville to play the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, by the way, it's a winnable game. Jaguars kind of stumbling, not getting a lot going offensively. They have a good defense. They have some good skill players. Their quarterback is terrible. Let's see if the Bills can not only get to the postseason, but win a playoff game. We'll be back with you tomorrow, right here on Periscope, Facebook Live, as well as YouTube on replay. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.